Imagine this. You've worked hard your entire life. You've raised your kids to believe in themselves, to stay humble, to study, to dream. You've told them, you are just as worthy as anyone else in this world. Now imagine your children. Walk onto a plane holding boarding passes for first class. Seats you paid for with your own money. They're excited, smiling, carrying their little backpacks. But the moment they step toward those wide leather seats, a flight attendant blocks their way. Not because the tickets are wrong, not because there's been a mistake, but because they're black. This is not a scene from a movie. This is not a scripted drama. This is real life in the United States of America. Today's story isn't just about a flight. It's about dignity. It's about how racism still poisons everyday moments. And it's about one powerful lesson that will shake you to your core. Stay with me until the end, because the way this story unfolds and the way it ends will leave you questioning what it really means to treat people with respect. The twins boarding. It was a sunny afternoon at JFK Airport. The Johnson twins, Amari and Aaliyah, were only 15 years old. Their father, Marcus Johnson, a highly respected CEO of a major tech company, had sent them on a flight to Los Angeles for a summer leadership program. Their father wanted them to experience the world, to see that their dreams had no limits. He booked them first-class tickets, not for luxury, but for safety, comfort, and the message, you belong anywhere you work hard enough to be. The twins walked confidently toward the gate, tickets in hand. As they entered the plane, their eyes widened at the sight of the spacious first-class cabin. For teenagers used to economy flights, this felt like a small dream come true. But before they could sit down, a middle-aged flight attendant with a forced smile stepped forward. "Excuse me, children. These seats are for first-class passengers only." Aaliyah politely responded, "Yes, ma'am. Here are our tickets." She held out the boarding passes. The attendant glanced at them, then back at the twins. Her expression hardened. "There must be some mistake. These can't be your seats. You need to move to the back." The confrontation, confused, Amari replied, "But these are our assigned seats, 3A and 3B. The flight attendant sighed, her tone laced with condescension. "Sweetheart, I think you're confused. First class isn't for everyone." Notice the pause. Notice the weight in that silence. What she really meant wasn't hidden. It was obvious. She didn't believe two young black teenagers could possibly belong in first class. Passengers nearby shifted uncomfortably. Some glanced down at their phones, pretending not to hear. Others raised their eyebrows but stayed silent. No one spoke up. The twins exchanged nervous looks. They weren't strangers to subtle racism, side comments at school, security guards, following them in stores, but this was different. This was public humiliation. Aaliyah whispered, "Show her again." Amari handed the tickets directly into the attendant's hand. She barely glanced before shaking her head. "Look, I don't have time for games. Please head toward economy so the real first-class passengers can sit down." Her voice carried loud enough for the cabin to hear. The twins froze. Their cheeks burned. They felt the sting of eyes watching them, judging, questioning, doubting. It wasn't just about seats anymore. It was about belonging, about being told you are less than. And at that moment, they faced a choice: stay quiet and move to the back, or stand their ground. Father steps in. As the tension grew, a familiar voice echoed from the boarding door. "Is there a problem here?" The cabin fell silent. Marcus Johnson, their father, had just boarded the plane. Dressed in a sharp business suit, his presence carried authority. But more than that, it carried the weight of a man who had fought these battles before. The flight attendant quickly plastered on a smile. "Oh, sir, no problem at all. Just sorting a little mix-up." Marcus looked at his children. He saw their shaken faces. He saw Aaliyah clutching her ticket. her eyes glossy with tears she was holding back. He didn't need an explanation. He already knew. He turned calmly to the attendant. "These are my children. They are seated in first class. Would you like me to repeat that louder?" the attendant stammered. I didn't realize." Marcus raised an eyebrow. His voice cut through the air like a blade. "You didn't realize what? That black children could belong in first class? That money, hard work and dignity don't apply to us? Help me understand." The entire cabin was listening now. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, ashamed they hadn't spoken up sooner. The attendant's face flushed. She mumbled an apology, but the damage was done. Marcus guided his children to their seats, his hand steady on their shoulders. But inside, his heart ached, because this wasn't just about a flight. It was about the lesson his children had learned, that even with privilege, even with success, racism could still try to deny them their place. The emotional core as eyes. The plane took off. The twins sat quietly, staring out the window. Aaliyah whispered, "Daddy, why did she treat us like that? We showed her our tickets." Marcus took a deep breath. This was the conversation he wished he never had to have, yet one every black parent knows too well. "Because sometimes," he said softly, "people don't see you for who you are. They see only the color of your skin, and they make judgments. Wrong ones, without knowing your story." Amari clenched his fists. "But it's not fair. We didn't do anything wrong." "You're right," Marcus nodded. "It's not fair. It's exhausting. It's ugly. But it's real, and you have to decide how you'll respond. Will you let them push you back? Or will you hold your ground and show them you belong everywhere you've worked for?" He looked them in the eyes. "Remember this moment, not as shame, not as anger, but as fuel. Because every time the world tells you you can't, you will prove them wrong. That's how we break this cycle." The twins sat a little taller. They weren't just passengers anymore. They were witnesses to a truth their generation must confront. And around them, something unexpected happened. A woman in the next row leaned forward. "Sir, I just want to say, thank you for standing up. I should have said something earlier." Another man across the aisle added, "Me too. That wasn't right. We need to do better." It was small, just words, but words that admitted guilt, words that acknowledged complicity, because racism doesn't just thrive on hatred. It thrives on silence, on the people who see injustice, but say nothing. And in that cabin, for once, silence was broken. Closing lesson, 400 words. When the plane landed, the twins walked off with their father, heads held high. They had endured humiliation, but they had also witnessed courage. The lesson was clear. Racism may try to shrink you, but it cannot define you. Silence allows prejudice to live, but speaking up, even in discomfort, can shatter it. And sometimes, the most powerful protest is simply claiming the space you already earned. The title of this story may be about first-class seats, but the truth goes deeper. It's not about airplanes. It's about classrooms, boardrooms, neighborhoods, job interviews, hospital waiting rooms. Every day, in 1,000 invisible ways, people of color are told they don't belong. And every day, they must decide whether to step back or to step forward. So ask yourself, if you were on that plane, would you have spoken up? Would you have defended those children? Or would you have stared at your phone, pretending nothing happened? Because the real fight against racism doesn't live in viral stories. It lives in ordinary moments, when you choose courage over comfort. And maybe, just maybe, if more of us spoke up, no child would ever have to ask their father, "Daddy, why don't they think we belong?"